G'day everyone, welcome back to the Leprechaun Laboratory. If you're new here, my name's Max and I do a lot of car stuff, and if you like cars, subscribe. You probably like what we've got going on. Today I want to talk to you guys about RB25s and what is the actual killer for these motors. Now, for someone who has half an idea of what kills these engines, it's very frustrating to go online and see all these people in the forums basically asking how much power will an RB25 handle, or how much boost can I run in a standard RB25. Now that is very, very dependent on the rest of your setup. For example, 14 PSI from the standard RB25 T28 is going to be completely different to 14 PSI from, say, a GT3076 or a 3582. So intake charges, efficiency, everything comes into play. So it's not so much just how much boost or how much power kills these motors. RBs are very much at the mercy of how you treat them. So depending on your driving or the application of the motor will greatly determine what will kill this engine. Basically, the biggest issue with these motors is RPM. Now, big RPM kills these motors for a few reasons. Basically, all of them are to do with oiling. The other thing that will kill these motors, as will kill any motor, is a bad tune. Now, a lot of people are out there trying to run big boost with a standard ECU. Now, it just doesn't work. That's how people crack ringlands. But anyway, I've got this motor here that came out of one of my S13s. It's knocking, it's got a knock in it, so I'm going to pull it down anyway, and as I go I'm going to show you exactly, on this motor, exactly what will kill or what will fail on an RB25 in certain situations and kill. The head and draining of the head. You would have seen me take off an oil drain from this point here that drains down to the block there. That is the only external oil drain on these motors from factory. Now at high RPM they tend to pump way too much oil into the head and they can't drain it fast enough. So what it does is creates a lot of pressure in the head and causes a lot of pressure through your breathers into your catch can, and can eventuate in basically pumping the sump dry of oil into the head and then running the sump dry, which, as you've seen here, can result in spinning bearings and all sorts of terrible things for motors. Now, there are ways to combat it. There are a few companies that make an extra external oil drain that bolts. You pump out this Welsh plug and you can bolt an external oil drain to there, which then drains back. You can tee it into your turbo drain or pick another spot on the block or the sump to drain it to, and that aids in draining the oil. The other thing you can do, is I'll show you once I get this head off, is you can actually get a machine shop to mill out the returns in the block, and the other thing you can do is put restrictors in the oil feeds. One of the issues that a lot of people have with these RB25s is they hear they have oiling issues and they go straight to putting a high volume oil pump in them. Obviously, now that you understand the problem with the oiling that they have, that it does not help at all with this issue. It's a very bad idea when it comes to a standard RB25, because basically all you're going to do is end up pumping more oil up into your head, which can't cope with the drainage. So there's one of the main issues with it, and I'll show you a bit more and explain a bit more once I get this head off. So you can see here, now that the head's been removed, these two feeds that actually feed your lifters, what you need to do is get smaller restrictors, and you can belt a machine shop. It's not really something you do at home, but you put extra restrictors in these two to limit how much oil flows into the head, and then all of the drains at the back can actually be milled out an extra about 1 mil, I reckon you can get them to. And that greatly helps your oil flow for the head and your drainage. Also, like I said, having that extra external drain really helps get oil out of the head and back into the sump. A lot of people run return to sump catch cans. Some people have mixed ideas about them, mostly because a lot of the oil that comes into your catch can, which is blow by, is polluted with fuel. So a lot of people rather not run that into your sump. But basically, a big thing is if you're running an RB25 at a track day or something like that, is not to go out and do 20 laps. Go out, do a few laps, check your catch can, see how much oil it's actually pushed into the catch can, and if it keeps pushing oil in it, keep topping it up with oil. I think most of the issue is people go to track days and try and do heaps of laps at a time and just end up draining them dry, which is obviously never going to end well. So looking at the head looks pretty good. Everything looks fine there. There's no marks on the pistons. Everything looks quite good on the pistons. Not much wear on the bore. This engine actually looks like it must have been quite healthy before it spun that bearing. Obviously that bearing is completely gone, so it is surprising that there wasn't enough movement in it for this piston to hit the valves. So lucky there, nothing's hit the valves, everything's still straight. So just a matter of have a look and see if that rod has actually damaged that crank. Alright, so we're just using a micrometer to measure the actual crank there, see if we might be able to get away with just linishing the crank and put new bearings in it. But as we pulled it out, there was literally no bearing shell left at all. No bearing shell left at all, so chances are, if it's been run that far with knocking that it's completely shut the entire bearing shell, chances are that the crank's probably going to be too far gone. So all we can do is measure it up and have a look. So we just measured this up with a micrometer. Obviously pretty hard to get accurate measurement while the crank's actually still in the block with the rotating assembly, most is still attached. Best thing you can do is get a reading from each side that you can get the micrometer in. This will give you an indication of whether the journal's actually still round or if it's actually worn itself out around, which can happen. Which gives you a pretty good indication of whether the crank's actually savable or not. Now, while this is out, I'll also show you this. This is another very common issue you will see people badmouth 25s about, is piston ringlands. Now, a lot of people will basically whinge and whine about RB25 piston ringlands cracking because they're very thin. Now, basically, ringlands will crack eventually, but I guarantee you that most of the people that whinge about this on the internet are running terrible tunes or stock ECUs and trying to put way too much boost in on a shitty tune. Basically, detonation will always kill ringlands anyway, but there is no way that these ringlands should break before essentially your rods start to be very unhappy if you have a decent tune or if it's tuned properly. So there's another RB25 common issue. As it seems, this throw journal is massively undersized and also quite out of round, so it's been run too long without a bearing with a knock, and obviously pretty much the crank's a throwaway. And I would probably also assume that if you actually put the main cap back on the rod cap back on the rod, that it would probably also be not very good also. So that means it's basically throwaway. Alright, so here we have the factory Nissan oil pump, of which I'll just take the main drive gear out and show you as the other main issue with RB25s and what will kill them. Yeah, whoever put this together put some bullshit Loctite on it. Inside the oil pump, you can see you have your main gear and your secondary gear, and your main drive actually drives off the collar on the crank. Now, removing that gear, you can see this gear and that collar on the gear is 22mm thick. Now, the problem is, come over here to the motor where the crank is. This collar on the crank, which is to drive this gear, is only 11mm thick. So once your gear's on there, you actually only have about 11mm of engagement. Now what this does is, when it's high revs and you start to get harmonics, because your harmonic balancer isn't that great, which is where the harmonic balancer comes into this, these gears can start to walk with harmonics and they just start to destroy themselves basically. And basically your oil pump will shit itself at high RPM. So that's basically the Achilles heel of these RB engines. This is only on the Series 1 and 2. The Neos, they have a longer collar on the crank, and the Neos also have a better head. But on the earlier Series 1 and Series 2 RB25s, this is a Series 2, they have this issue. So what you will find with them is a lot of people go out and buy billet oil pump gears, which does help because it makes the gears stronger so they don't mince themselves or each other. But what ends up happening is once you get harmonics and they come off that collar, you'll end up destroying the collar on the crank anyway. So there are plenty of solutions out there for that. There are people that make extended collars, so it's exactly the same, but the collar actually engages the entire width of the gear. There are also people like Atuku Garage and that have actually made JZ style engagements, which is basically a interference fit. So you mill down your crank where the collar is. You have an interference fit that is actually a gear drive, and you put that on your crank, and then you have a gear drive inside your oil pump. So there you have it, guys. That's basically the top 3 RB25 issues that you will find on the internet, explained with real world examples. So firstly, you have issues with ringlands cracking. Most people will talk about that. Secondly, you have issues with oiling and in the head, it not being able to drain oil fast enough or having too much feed. And thirdly, you have issues with the oil pump gears actually just destroying themselves and wrecking your oil pump. So obviously, as far as ringlands go, if you are pushing say 14 PSI on a standard T28 RB25 turbo, that intake charge is going to be really hot. That turbo is working way out of its efficiency. And if you're running a standard ECU and it's not a very good tune, chances are you're going to detonate and crack your ringlands. And I really believe these engines get a very bad rep that's undeserved. Because once you fix these issues in them, or if you have a good tune and you're not revving them excessively, they are a very good motor. As far as how much power these engines can actually push out as far as just pure cylinder pressure, there have been plenty of people that have run up to 500 crank horsepower in these motors, and they're still alive today. Over that 500, your rods start to get pretty unhappy, but as long as your tune's good, and as long as if you're planning on revving, you're combating high RPM by means of obviously extended crank collar and a decent harmonic balancer and fixing the oiling issues in the block so that it can actually drain oil. There's no reason that these engines should just die, essentially. So there you go, people. If you want to use these engines for drifting, cheap insurance is a good harmonic balancer to try and save your oil pump. If you're going to pull them down, put an extended collar on the crank or put a gear-driven collar on the crank. And if you're going that far, the best thing to do is to put restrictors in the feeds to the head, and also mill out the drains back to the sump and put that extra external drain in the back of the head. If you do all this, these engines should treat you pretty well. Like I said as well, if you're going to the track and you're going to rev them, come off every few laps, check your catch can, see how much oil you're blowing out every few laps. That'll give you a pretty good indication of how many laps you can do before you need to top up your oil. It's all about basically having mechanical sympathy. Now, these motors are not the best. They have flaws like all motors do. If you know what to look out for, you can keep them alive for longer. So there you go, guys. That's basically everything I can tell you about RB25 issues. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope I taught you something today in all the gibberish. If I did teach you something, please like and subscribe. There's plenty more good content on my channel, so check it out. Also, head to my Instagram and my Facebook, give that a like, give us a follow. There's plenty of stuff on there, so go check it out. Cheers, guys.